Solutions Barbados welcomes your candidate for St. Lucie, John Carter.
Hello, everyone. I can't see a soul over there. I want to ask you, anybody out there likes cricket? I know the Westerners have not been doing so good recently, but still, you might like cricket. On Saturday, 14th of March, 1981, I was at Kensington Oval, sitting next to the northern side screen. A fast bowler by the name of Michael Holding was bowling the first over in that test match, the Jeff boycott of England. Now, I don't know if you know anything about boycott, but as far as boycott is concerned, the 3 stumps behind him and the 2 bills on those stumps, he is going to secure them like the gold in Fort Knox in the United States. Well, Holding was bowling to him a real devastating over. I was sitting on the grounds at Kensington Oval. They say the first ball that Jeff Boycott received hit his gloves and went towards second slip. Now, I really can't remember that, but that's what they tell me. But I know this for a fact, that balls 2, 3, 4, and 5 passed Boycott. He knew they had passed him when he heard the sound of that ball striking the wicketkeeper's gloves. He never saw them. So Boycott is settling into his stance once more. He is watching the batsman at the other end because he knows he has one more ball to negotiate and it will be that batsman's turn with the next fast bowler. Well, Holding never appeared in his run-up to be hustling. He had a very smooth, leopard-like run-up to the wicket. He bowled this last ball at Boycott. And for about 3 seconds, there was a hush around Kensington Oval. Then pandemonium broke out. People jumping and prancing and running and screaming and hollering. Boycott looked somewhat bewildered. Then he realized that the fielders were doing the same thing, running and jumping and prancing and hollering. And then it dawned on Boycott to look behind him to see what was happening. When he looked behind him, his off stump was tumbling backward towards the wicketkeeper. He had failed to secure his stumps and the bails. He was now walking back to the pavilion with his head down in bewilderment. He did not secure his wicket. Tonight, I want to talk to you briefly about food security for all Barbadians and you. I don't want what happened to Boycott to happen to us in Barbados. Taken by surprise and totally unprepared for a food disaster. Now, food security, like integrity legislation, which my colleague just spoke about, is one of those words or buzz phrases that you hear from political, economic, and social planners, but hardly any real action is taken to make it a reality in this country. So when a devastating disaster ball arrives at us, we are as unprepared as Boycott was on that fateful day. But I want to change that. You hear me, brethren and friends? I want to change that. We must move from the useless talk and rhetoric to real planning, organizing, and execution to make food security a reality in our country for your family and mine. Thank you. There are many threats to food security in this country. Some of them we have no control over. Weather patterns. Now listen, I am a man of God. When it rained in Barbados heavily today, I look up, I said to the rain, no rain in Independence Square at 6 o'clock. So I can deal with weather patterns. The government can't. External health epidemics and pests from other countries over which we have no control and never had to deal. They threaten our food security. Disasters in countries where we import our food from. They threaten our food security. But there's much that you and I and the rest of Barbados can do to mitigate these threats to our food security. Now, the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations defines food security this way. They say it is a situation when all people at all times have physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their dietary needs. Listen to that. They must have access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. I like that definition, but I want to go further. Food security is not only having access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets our dietary needs for our food and our food preferences for an active and healthy life. Listen, food security exists, listen to me carefully, food security exists when you are not dependent on other nations to supply you with sufficient, safe, nutritious food that meets your dietary needs. That's what food security is. You can't be dependent on the United States or Trinidad or Canada or England or Europe. Because the day that a disaster happens in one of those countries, let me tell you something, and there's a shortage of food there, they are going to supply their own citizens first. Then Barbados will come. Recently, we witnessed the effects of some devastating hurricanes in the Caribbean, decimated some of our neighbors. But you know, one of the things they said about Dominica is that they noticed in Dominica that tuber crops such as yam, dasheen, and sweet potatoes proved to be so resilient following the hurricane that shortly afterwards they were still being harvested. You hear that? Shortly after the hurricane, they could still harvest those crops. But Barbados does not enjoy that luxury. I'm going to tell you why. We import in this country, did you know we import in this country over 80% of the food that we consume? Think about that. 80% of the food that is consumed in this country comes through our ports. Can you imagine? We were threatened by a man from England not so long ago that if we don't adjust our behaviors to certain other people's behaviors, they will stop sending money to us. Yeah. Can you imagine being held to ransom like that when it comes to food? Listen. The last time I gave this speech, the time I went 28 minutes. And they only allowed me 10 to 15 tonight, so I really got to move. Listen. Depending on what reports you read, you will hear that Barbados imported last year, 2016, $656 million in food. I wonder where they put it. I read a statistic some time ago too, that we import $90 million in alcoholic beverages into this country. I asked myself, who is drinking all of that? Pastor up there, are you? I know he's not. But the cost of this food might be due to a lot of things. The international community, when the oil prices go up, they send up the prices to us. So that might take care of some of the rising prices. But since we are importing in excess of 80% of our food supply, it means that we are facing two significant threats. A shortage of money to import food. Listen, we go in the supermarket. I ask myself, for the life of me, I don't understand why we would go to the supermarket and find 10 different brands of corned beef on a shelf. How many different kinds of corned beef can you eat? A waste of time and money. So we have a shortage of money to import food. They tell us we're down to about 10 weeks of foreign reserves right now. So that's a problem. Then there's a lack of domestic output of food in this country. So if a disaster happens to any of the nations who supply us with food, a man told me on this platform, we are in what? Potter? Who is that? Yes. We are in Potter, a good Bajan expression, if it happens. But what it means, essentially, is this, that a small percentage of people in this country who have money will still be able to buy food. They will get on their private jets, they will go and get it. They will get on their yachts, they will go and get it. And then those who have people in their back pockets, those people will also be facilitated. But for the most Barbarians in this country, we are going to be faced with serious food problems. Like Venezuela, I was hoping to have had a visit tonight, but I didn't get it in time, so I can't show it. Long lines snaking around places to get food. Reminds me of the oil crisis we had some years ago, when you had to go at 5 o'clock in the morning and line up at the gas station to get a few gallons of gas in your truck or vehicle. But the shortage of food would create a serious dislocation in this nation. When people cannot eat, they become lawless. They become violent. They become uncaring of others. And they have very little respect for human life. But you know what? It was not always like that in Barbados. We used to have food security. Listen, I can give you a report of a department in Barbados. Now, don't come to me afterwards and ask me what this means. Because I went on, I Googled it, and I still don't understand what Google said. But the Barbados food, listen to me, the Barbados food consumption and anthropometric survey. That's the word I didn't understand, anthropometric. Still trying to figure out what it means. That was carried out in 2000 and 2001 by the National Nutrition Center of the Ministry of Health in Barbados, in collaboration with the Barbados Statistical Service, the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development. And when they did this survey, they discovered an interesting thing about Barbados. They discovered that in 1969, 74% of all households in Barbados produced food or had some food or fruit growing on their property. Well, we got 77,000 households in Barbados. I gave them out here. That's this. Yeah, I mean, we got information from, I said I had to check it. 74% of the households in Barbados planted some food crop. So if anything happened to Barbados, we could still feed ourselves. Especially in St. Lucie. Go St. Lucie. By 1981, remember I told you that in 1969, 74% of households planted food. By 1981, that has fallen to 56.2%. You see what's happening here? Well, when the survey was done in 2001, it had fallen to 32% of households planting food in this nation. We got to change that, friends. We got to get back to planting Barbados. Every household in Barbados should plant something. Some people say, if you go up to Coverley, because there's zero-lot houses, we're going to plant. But let me tell you something. Those houses have a little patio. Put a little can on it and plant something. Well, so my time 40 minutes gone, about 15 minutes. So, you know, I'm down to seconds now, so we're going to wrap up here. So let me tell you this. One more thing. We are destroying fruit trees in this nation as if it's going to style. We used to have a regulation against cutting down trees. I don't know what happened to it. But the cutting down of fruit trees has to stop. Has to stop in this nation. And we're going to implement a policy. The only way you can cut a fruit tree down in this nation, after we form this government, that tree has to pose a threat to your home and your safety. We will always cut it down. But you have to plant back 2 trees somewhere in its place. We got to produce food in this nation, brethren. We have to have real food security that means something, not phrases that people are touting because they want votes. We want real food security. So plant Barbados. Thank you very much.